What's up everybody, Jesse here, or Game Over Jesse as you may know me, and today I have my beautiful daughter with me to help me with this video. And we have a question for you. Should video game consoles be upgradable? Now, by this, it kind of stems from a recent rumor that the PlayStation 4 is getting a newer model, a PlayStation 4.5, that will allow you to play the same exact games that you've always been able to play, but now in 4K. And new games that come out will be able to run in 4K on this new version of the PlayStation 4. We've seen something like this before with the 3DS and the new 3DS, where it allows certain games that aren't playable at all to now be playable. And older games now run better, they run faster. Some games like Super Smash Bros. That couldn't be played in 3D on a video game console that allowed you to play games in 3D is now suddenly playable in 3D. So with the PlayStation 4.5, it'll be a newer model that lets you play games. But what I want to know is, should that even be the news? Why can't it be like video game consoles in the past? Nintendo did this for the longest time. This isn't new. Nintendo, on the regular NES, a lot of people didn't know this, it had a floppy disk drive that you could plug in and put a floppy disk in there, and suddenly you're able to save games. Games are able to have new functionality. With the original Zelda game, you were allowed to design, create, and share your own dungeon design, sort of like Super Mario Maker, but with Zelda dungeons. On the Super Nintendo, it had something similar, and even on the Nintendo 64, it had two ways of being upgraded. You could plug in the 64 disk drive, which was only released in Japan, that let you put CDs in. Suddenly, video games like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time had a completely new second story DLC before DLC was even possible. Not only that, the game itself looked better, it had more detail. New things completely opened up because of this expansion. In America, we didn't get that because it didn't sell too well. So what they did, they released the little red thing of RAM that you remember taking out of your Nintendo 64 and putting the new one in there. And again, suddenly games like Perfect Dark, Donkey Kong 64, Majora's Mask that weren't playable without this extra RAM are now playable. They look better than games that ran before it, and it brought more colors, so it said, and better graphics, so it said, to games that you already had. So, with that in mind, why is PlayStation 4 just releasing a new console to do this? Why didn't they plan ahead? Now, when they released this console, they said they wanted it to have a 10-year life cycle. So, when did it release? 2 years ago? So 2014, I think? 2013? So they wanted it to go to year 2023, 2024 before they stopped making games for this. Well, 4K TVs were just starting to come out when this console released. So if they want to not lag behind like the Wii was, they had to think quick. How are we going to release this console that on some games can play 1080p 60 frames a second, but some games have to be scaled back to 900p. Some games like The Witcher can't even run at 60 frames a second. We have to draw that back to 30 frames a second, which isn't that big of a deal to me. But why didn't they plan ahead? Why are they releasing a new console, a new version? Which, don't get me wrong, they always do this. With the PlayStation 2, we had the slim version. With the PlayStation 1, there was the second version that came out. With the PlayStation 3, there was, I believe, 2 different slim versions that came out. And then Xbox 360 did this. Xbox One, it looks like a giant VCR. They're probably going to do the same thing. But when PlayStation 4 releases their slim model, it's not going to be a slim model. Chances are it'll look almost the same. Might be a little bit bigger to deal with the extra heat output, but it's going to have a way better GPU. Now, instead of running games at 1080p and 60 frames a second, you're suddenly going to be able to play games at 4K. Maybe there'll be a patch for certain games that are already out that will give you the option to choose depending on if you have the system or not, and if you have the TV or not. And then on new games, maybe the option will already be there. So I think that's a fantastic idea. You can already choose whether you want your console to output in 720p or 1080p or whatever. So maybe this will just go along with that in the options. But why didn't they think of this sooner? Instead of making you pay the $400 for your PlayStation 4, and then a few years later pay $500 or even $600 for the PlayStation 4.5. Why didn't they just build in a slot to where you can take out your GPU and just plug a more powerful one in there? So instead of paying $400 or $500 more, you're paying $200, $300 instead of double that. It doesn't make too much sense. Obviously they want to sell more, and if this does come out, if this rumor is true, they won't be showing it this year. I think this year E3 and everything will be dedicated to VR. Next year at E3, I believe, is when they unveil this. I think we'll start seeing hints at this towards the end of the year. Maybe a mention at the Video Game Awards or something. But I think this is going to be something saved for next year. This is going to be the big thing for next year. And suddenly, everybody that's complaining that the PlayStation 4 isn't powerful enough to run VR will suddenly have their answer. The PlayStation 4.5 that can run games in 4K. It will be just as powerful as a new console, as a new gaming computer. It'll be able to run everything on the highest settings. Now this brings in the question, will it allow you to play games in 4K at high or medium settings, or choose to play it at 1080p with extreme settings or ultra settings? Will there be options? Will games be handled more like computer games? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And click over here if you want to watch more discussion type videos like this. And click over here if you want to help support this channel. And click up here for some of my Zelda mailbags, where myself and other people answer your Zelda questions that you submit. Thank you for watching.